But what I do like is how Stan is representative of right-wing males as a whole, and the series doesn't shy away from what a problem Stan's narcissistic, ultra-patriotic, right-wing beliefs actually are. Every episode this season has its main problem resulting from Stan's beliefs and Stan's actions. American Dad has been a beloved part of my life since it came out in 2005. So, how does it hold up? Actually quite well politically. I mean, there are takedowns of the manosphere, which really didn't have a name back then now that I think about it. But there's takedowns of the Republican Party, of conservatism. And then there's a myriad of other problems. First, we need to go over the first season of American Dad for those who are both unfamiliar with it and who haven't seen it in a long time. Episode 1, titled Pilot, is a bit on the nose if you ask me, but plot A, Steve asking the cheerleader getting turned down and realizing that dogs make people popular. Stan winds up getting him a dog that was alive in the Reagan administration.
Francine, this dog has character. All right, he was around for the Reagan administration. He knows how things are supposed to be.
And I wasn't kidding. It's a joke that gets better as time goes on. Meanwhile, Roger is forced to go on a diet and is forced to sneak snacks at night. This results in Stan thinking there is a break-in and shoots Steve's dog by accident. And everything is back to square one. And then after his dog dies, Stan helps Steve become school president, which he thinks will get him a girl, only for it to not work. The girl rejects him, and Steve throws a tantrum that locks the school down. Episode 2, Threat Levels, starts out with, as things sometimes do, with Stan accidentally exposing the family to a deadly biological agent.
This is not soup.
The family survives, but most of their neighbors put their houses up on the market, which inspires Francine to become a realtor. However, she winds up making even more money than Stan, and Stan feels emasculated, seeking to sabotage Francine's career. Meanwhile, Steve and Haley are using empty houses Francine is selling for bum fights. Stan muscles in on this business so he can continue to make more money than Francine, therefore prove his masculinity and alpha maleness. In retaliation, Haley unionizes the bums, forcing Stan to fight a bum of their choosing. The bum takes a dive and Haley and Steve become rich by betting on Stan to win. Stan, without a way to make more money, kidnaps Alan Greenspan's Schnauzer and forces him to raise interest rates by 20%, putting Francine out of business. Episode 3, Stan Knows Best, features Stan shaving Haley's head out after she dyes her hair green for a Green Party rally. Stan and Francine find out that Haley is dating Jeff. Haley moves into Jeff's van, where she is forced to find a job to pay for her tuition. She ends up stripping, where she is spotted by Stan out on a celebration with his CIA friends. Jeff and Stan try to force Haley out of the club, only to wind up losing and get a very big talking to. Stan learns that he must support his daughter. He and Francine attend one of her shows. This is where her wig falls off and she is forced to quit out of shame. The B plot features Steve trying to take a girl to the dance. He figures out that the sympathy vote is the way to go and convinces Roger to play his burn victim's sister in return for moving into Haley's old room. On the night of the dance, Kim, Steve, Roger all head to Steve's house before the dance. However, Kim stays with Roger and Steve, opting to stay with Roger, offering makeup tips. Roger, being insecure because he's in the attic all the time, enjoys the attention he's receiving until Steve tries to force the issue and they get into a fight. Kim leaves in a huff, angry at Steve for using his sister in that fashion. Episode 4, entitled Francine's Flashback, the A plot features Stan forgetting their anniversary, which results in him using CIA technology to wipe Francine's memory.
Why the hell does my wife think it's 1985?
Huh. Instead of erasing the last 20 hours, I must have erased the last 20 years. Oh, I guess this is the dial for hours, and this is the dial for years. Yeah.
What follows is Stan trying to bring Francine's memory back by wooing her by reenacting the day they met. And the entire thing doesn't work because of who Stan is right now. Francine returns to her old apartment where Jeff drags Francine to Burning Man. In fact, it is only after Stan saves her life and shows a bit of humility and how much he actually misses Francine that Francine gets her memory back and realizes why she loves Stan in the first place. The B plot features Steve trying to get a date with Felicia Wilkner on the condition of finding a date for Elisa's friend Jewel.
Godzilla!
Roger fills this position and they both head out to a double date. Steve is having the time of his life as Roger is fighting off Jewel's advances. After Roger's wig falls off during one such advance, Steve and Roger are forced to knock out their dates, and Stan uses that same CIA technology to wipe their memories. Episode 5, Roger Codger. Stan is humiliated at work when Agent Duper beats him in the simulation. To redeem himself, Stan invited Deputy Director Bullock to dinner. Since Roger is hunted by the CIA, this means that Roger has to hide in the attic all night. However, Roger finds himself running out of alcohol and heading downstairs to find some. Stan rushes Roger into the bathroom where he is nearly discovered. By the time Bullock actually pushes his way into the bathroom, Roger has sprayed ectoplasm everywhere. Roger is so stressed he passes out, finding that the family thought he was dead and threw his body out in the garbage. He tries to get home dressed as an old lady, where he's picked up by a bus transporting senior citizens on a field trip. Roger mixes with them, where he is found by the CIA, forcing Stan to save him. And the B-plot isn't that much, actually. Stan winds up having to face his loss and admits to a doctor that he misses Roger. Episode 6, Homeland Insecurity, Francine sets up a neighborhood party. At the same time, Stan forces Steve to join the Scout Rangers to teach him some American values. As the party is going on, Steve has his initiation where he burns down a gazebo. This causes Stan to think the town is under terrorist attack, and he blames the new neighbors, an Iranian couple named the Mamaris. Stan imprisons these new neighbors in his backyard, turning it into a mini Guantanamo Bay. Steve, however, seeks to escape the scouts and accidentally knock the power to the city. A police officer brings Stan his jacket from the power plant, and Stan tortures himself, thinking that he is a hypnotized sleeper agent, allowing his neighbors to leave. Episode 7, Deacon Stan Jesus Man. The entire A-plot of this episode around Stan and his desire to be Deacon of the church. Basically, simply to beat his rival Chuck White. Now, to beat Chuck White in an election, Stan hires Karl Rove. Now, if you don't know who that is, when George Bush ran for president in 2001, Karl Rove was his chief political advisor. During the election, Roger eats Francine's potato salad that was key to their election strategy, and is forced to replace it using his own alien breast milk. And in a shocking turn of events, Steve uses this election to try to get closer to Betsy, Chuck White's daughter. However, the new potato salad is so successful to Stan's election campaign that he forces Roger to enter a feeding trough, where Roger is milked incessantly and not allowed to be a simple alien being. Roger begins to choke, and Steve is forced to perform CPR. However, Roger accidentally passes Steve an alien egg, which results in Steve being pregnant. In order to save his chances at being Deacon, Stan takes Steve to Mexico to force Steve into an abortion. However, during this trip, Stan realizes just how far he is going for a simple deaconship, abdicates the deaconship. And to resolve that B-plot, Steve kisses Betsy and passes on the alien egg. Now, I know I said in the beginning of the video I would go over season 1. It turns out that there's a bit of confusion with the numbering system. Fox Network, when it came out with American Dad, counted it in the eyes of the traditional broadcast season, which would end after the 7th episode. So 7 episodes fill out season 1, and everything else that came after fill out season 2. That is not how TBS counts it. So what I thought was season 1 was actually 23 episodes. I can't do 23 episodes in a single video. That would be way too long and way too complex for me, and I want content. That's what it comes down to. I need content. So I'm going to do the rest of season 1 later on with just these first episodes right now. Now, I also know that I went over these episodes rather quickly. I just wanted to cover the main plot points and none of the details. Again, I wanted to worry about the runtime, the editing time, that sort of thing. I like this season a lot. I would also argue that there's a classic episode of the Fox era in Deacon Stan Jesus Man. Now, the animation, that's horrible. But what I do like is how Stan is representative of right-wing males as a whole. And the series doesn't shy away from what a problem Stan's narcissistic, ultra-patriotic, right-wing beliefs actually are. Every episode this season has its main problem resulting from Stan's beliefs and Stan's actions, even as they are mocked and ridiculed. I mean, yes, there are some jokes.
A little bit longer and their last 24 hours will be completely forgotten.
Oh, thank God.
You are not off the hook, mister. I am deeply disappointed in you.
Dad, I was with this one.
Even though Stan is this conservative, he is portrayed as easily manipulated and tricked, which, given this election... Now, look what happens when Steve wants a dog.
Stan, a dog's not such an awful idea. It might teach Steve the responsibility he'll need for when he one day joins the army.
Are you seriously contemplating a military career?
Thinking about it?
How easy it was for Francine to manipulate him. It's a brief moment, but it really shows Stan's internal mental problems. Subtle, ego, and his complete lack of being able to be vulnerable are portrayed as weaknesses. Something that needs to be fixed rather than ignored, like with episode 4. Francine regresses to an earlier age, and she can't remember Stan. Because Stan is so completely different and narcissistic from what he used to be, the only way Francine gets better is when Stan shows some humility and saves her. Now, what I took from that is that Stan's current mental state is completely unlovable. Actually, this will come up multiple times later in the series. There are multiple episodes where Francine leaves him. There are a couple of episodes where Haley goes off to live on her own, and so on and so forth. Stan is clearly the problem and the catalyst for all the family's issues. I mean, heck, he even refused to admit he was wrong about a terrorist attack in episode 7, and as a result, he had himself tortured by himself rather than admit he was wrong. I mean, what kind of mentally ill psychopath does that? Here's the thing, it's a wonderful thing to see. It's directly challenging the belief systems of people like Donald Trump or Andrew Tate, who say that this kind of hyper-masculine, alpha male, ultra-patriotic belief system is the only way for a white male to exist. We can look at the events of each episode, dig a bit, and find out that these are Stan's problems, and Stan is the one causing them. Stan is never really truly happy. Like in episode 2, his wife makes more money than him. A healthy person would look at that situation and think, cool, we have more spending money. Stan looks at that situation and sees it as a threat to his masculinity. That's not healthy. That is a tremendous amount of insecurity, a tremendous amount of ego, and quite frankly, hurts the family. This belief system has honestly started to affect his family as well. For example, once Steve is elected class president in the pilot episode, Steve believes that power is equated to love, so he goes out to ask Lisa Silver. Lisa Silver turns him down, saying, hey, no, I only want to be seen with you because you're vice president. I don't actually like you. Steve throws a fit, locks himself into the principal's office. Stan is forced to give a heartfelt speech where he reveals that he was just as nerdy and as unpopular as Steve is right now. This actually boosts Steve up, gives him something to look forward to, and the only way Stan could do that is by being emotionally vulnerable. Steve gets strength from someone else's emotional vulnerability. That's something we need to see more of. I mean, heck, look at my Lindsey Sterling videos. I reacted to Lindsey Sterling before I went to one of her concerts, and I'm literally crying in some of them because I am so emotional. It's okay for men to cry. It's okay for men to be vulnerable. Look at the opposite. Look what Stan has to do just to protect his little world. Weakening the entire economy of the United States because his wife is making more money than him. Kidnapping all of his neighbors because he saw smoke and thought it was a terrorist attack. He deals with the source of evil that literally cannot enter a church.
There he is. Come on up.
I'm good right here. My work is done. Farewell, Stan.
By the way, it's my favorite bit ever this season. In order to win a meaningless volunteer job at a church. And that is even get into how far he goes in the details of the episodes I never covered. I mean, like, okay, look at Deacon Stan Jesus Man. Stan has his competitor, and when it comes down to prove that he is the best, he winds up forcing Roger into a literal feeding trough, where he is not allowed to move or exist as an individual person. Even after Steve is impregnated and needs love and support, Stan can only see a threat to his victory, despite his own son's health being at risk. That isn't a strength of humanity, that is a weakness of humanity. The only way either situation improves is when Stan shows some humility, and when it comes down to it, there's really no metaphor to how harmful Stan's ideology can be. But here it is, playing out in front of our own eyes. Granted, it's in a way to make us laugh at its absurdities, but many people who need to hear this message won't see it if they weren't being entertained, if they felt they were being attacked directly. On top of that, if it wasn't entertaining for anyone else, no one would watch it, and we would not have this show right now. I mean, granted, in this first season, I think Stan went way, way, way too far. His behavior and the behavior of others in the main cast crossed into the line I really hate, which is abuse as humor. So when it comes to something as him shaving Haley's head as a punishment, my skin crawls as the audience is expected to laugh. Hell, even in the pilot episode, after the heartfelt speech, the joke is that Stan calls the CIA and has Lisa Silverman's family deported. And on that very same scene, just listen to Francine's speech.
Steve, it's Mommy. Listen, honey, you're not alone. When I was your age, I had a huge crush on someone, too. Mr. Feeney, my algebra teacher. Such a cute man with a neat little beard. Of course, he didn't take me seriously. But that all changed when his wife found me in their closet, cutting myself and sniffing his t-shirts.
Now, I had a friend who had his life ruined because of a false accusation like that. I was not laughing. My skin was in knots and I had a panic attack. Now, there are even other Family Guy style cutaway gags, like here with Pillowhands McGee.
God, Steve! You couldn't get me the Aviator or the Tickler or Pillowhands McGraw?
No way! Not me! I ain't no scab!
Pillowhands is a term I've heard in boxing. It means someone who can't hit very hard. And here it is as a visual joke. In these first 7 episodes, there are jokes like this scattered about. I'm honestly really glad that they went past this Family Guy cutaway episode because American Dad's Identity doesn't need that. I mean, on top of that, right now it's dated. Like, I really, really love the writing and the absurdist humor in the later episodes. At the same time, it's trying to take down patriotic culture. This is American Dad is leaning heavily into the politics of the time rather than politics of themselves. For example, how many of you would instantly know who Karl Rove was until I mentioned in 2005 when this episode came out? And of course, in the preceding years with Bush's re-election, Karl Rove would have been in the newspapers. I was alive during that time, and when I saw Karl Rove as this, not being able to enter a church because he is so evil, I died laughing. But in 2024, that reference is basically dead. As another example, the warning system that Stan has on his fridge.
Be very careful out there today. We're at Terror Alert Orange, which means something might go down somewhere in some way at some point in...
After September 11th, the government was pressured to do something. So they went ahead and came up with a color-coded warning system to show how dangerous the USA was at any given time. It was worthless, and I think it was outdated by the time this episode came out. I mean, on the other hand, the fact that they're using Karl Rove, the color system, the fact that I'm familiar with it and how old and useless they are, winds up being a statement on the Republican Party themselves, which is something I don't think anyone intended, but it works out great. Character-wise, the core of everyone who will be is here, except for Roger and Klaus. It's entertaining enough for the first season, but there's no way American Dad could have succeeded if they went along this path. For example, take Klaus. In this first season, he's just there to be the perverted German guy trapped in a fish's body.
Roger, take something out or close the refrigerator.
Nothing looks good to me. You know what looks good to me? Francine bent over that sink.
Klaus, calm down.
He'll be in a scene, say something, and then drift off into the background. Roger, without his costumes, and thank God we have episode 5 to show us just how well it could work, because I think that is what helped develop Roger into what he is today. Roger is not the main character of any scene anymore. He is always the supporting character. Both these characters are just sort of there to be with somebody else rather than be by themselves. They could set something up for a joke, move the scene along, but that is all they are there for. Why is Roger on a diet in episode 1? So he could rummage around at night to give Santa a reason to shoot Steve's dog. Speaking of Steve, he's so one note. He deserves his own section. Out of the 7 episodes I've reviewed right now, 4 of them have side stories of Steve getting a date, and the hijinks that result from that. That storyline got real boring real quick, even though it was the same storyline over and over. The way they made it different each time is how Family Guy would be written later on, and I think that is a good thing. And I think the fact that they did it right now in these 4 seasons showed how well it could work, and that helped making American Dad stronger down the road. Over 21 seasons, there are absolutely repeated plot lines, but look at how Steve's plot lines repeat this time. Every time it is different. One time he goes on a date, it has to be with Roger. Second time he goes on a date, he tries the pity vote. Third time he goes on a date, and I mean, you get the idea, right? Every storyline was a different take on the same idea. I just wish they didn't do it in the first 7 freaking episodes. What is really noticeable is the animation. Everything except the pilot is passable for 2005, but is very clearly hand-drawn and rather impressively bad at points. I mean, holy hell, what were they thinking about holding on to this? Now, there are a few bits here and there that are clever for hand-drawn animation, like the scene with Klaus. This is what I call unexpectedly clever. 99% of what we see in the show is like right here, where they're in this slightly turned toward camera, facing one another. But this it takes actual effort to make, to think of, and it's actually really hard to pull off. And I think if the weaknesses and strengths of this season didn't interact the way they did, we would have gotten another Family Guy clone. The seeds for another Family Guy clone were there in the same way they were there for the Cleveland show. But American Dad distanced itself from that, and I think that is a good thing. But everyone, please let me know what you think about the season below. My PayPal and my Patreon are in the description. Everyone, please have fun and enjoy.